If you make good money but still feel one surprise away from stress, this episode is your wake up call in the best way because income isn't freedom. Optionality is. Today, we're calculating your optionality score. How flexible your life really is over the next 90 days across cash, time, income, and decision making so you can stop guessing and start making the moves that buy back real choices. Grab the worksheet on the website and watch the YouTube deep dive after the episode. Let's score it. What's happening, my amazing optionality builders, my high earners? We are building real power on purpose. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show, where we talk wealth, wisdom, and money moves without shame, without fluff, and without the just stop buying coffee nonsense. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, your wealth identity coach and money co-pilot. Today, we're doing something that gives instant financial clarity. This episode is called Your Optionality Score. How flexible is your life in the next 90 days? And I'm asking you that exact question because it exposes the thing most people actually miss. Income is not the same as freedom. Optionality is freedom. You can earn good money and still feel financially tight or insecure. You can have a high salary and still feel like one surprise expense could throw off your whole entire month or maybe even your life. And if that's you, you're not crazy and you probably aren't irresponsible. And more than likely, you're not necessarily bad with money. You likely have a low optionality system. So here's the cold, open question that tells the actual truth. If your income dropped 20% for 90 days, what in your life will break first? Is it housing? Is it debt payments that you have? Is it childcare? Or could it be your ability to invest or continually invest? Or is it your ability to help your family? Or maybe it's just your nervous system. If you don't know the answer today, we're going to fix that because this episode is a diagnostic. Think of it as a money MRI, not a moral judgment or a measurement. So let's first define financial optionality in plain English. Here's what I'm talking about. Financial optionality is the ability to choose without living in panic or your nervous system going on red. It's liquidity. Remember, liquidity is what amount of cash can we access in a very short amount of time? It's flexibility. It's low obligation load. Optionality shows up when you can say no to something that isn't necessarily aligned with your life or your values, handle a surprise expense without more debt, make a clear career move without feeling like you're spiraling in the one that you're in. It also allows you to invest consistently without second guessing every major headline that you see in the news or on TikTok. It also allows you to take a break and not feel like the sky is falling. And the reason why this hits high earners especially so hard is because high earners is a lot of you are living on a very strong income with a very fragile structure. That might be why you hear some people say, I make good money, but why do I still feel broke? The answer usually is one of these, that your fixed costs are just too high or they've continuously grown as you have developed more income or higher income. Maybe your debt payments are now so stacked that most of your money is going to your housing and paying those debts. There might also be no financial baseline or clarity. Or if you have a buffer, the buffers are super, super thin and very, very fragile as well. Another reason could be you have obligations that are really heavy. If you're operating as a family CEO, not just for your nuclear family, but your extended family, and providing community support, you might have a level of over responsibility. It could be that your administration around money is very chaotic or non-existent. And it could be that you're just overexposed to the noise, the financial noise that's out there. So you keep actually renegotiating or relitigating the plan that you actually currently have. All of this creates financial overwhelm and money anxiety, even when your income looks really good. So let me connect this to the wealth capacity really quick because it's directly related. So remember, we've talked about wealth capacity is why your life feels heavy, even when the numbers work theoretically. Wealth capacity is what your life can actually hold without breaking. If your life is already full of work and family and leadership obligations, caregiving, your capacity for complex money management is lower than you might think that it is. So then what happens? You delay decisions, you avoid checking those statements, or you overcheck, or you overthink, and your nervous system starts to stay on high alert. That's why financial wellness for women has become more than just about budget. It has to be about systems that reduce your cognitive load because women, especially high capacity women, are carrying a lot. Now, you're going to use your wealth identity language lightly here because your pattern shapes where optionality might be getting lost in the sauce. So now remember, your wealth identity is the pattern behind your optionality problems or barriers, right? So again, if you're a builder, you have complexity creep. You build a life in a system that requires constant attention when you may not have the time or the energy. For my caretakers, you have over responsibility. You fund stability for others before you've actually created your own solid ground. For the maximizers, you end up stacking. You optimize and compare and chase best moves, which increases your anxiety. And for my minimalist strategists, you are avoiding. You delay admin and the costs drift until they become so heavy and you can't help but have to deal with them. But now there's all these extra fees or late payments that are now creeped up to make that obligation even bigger than it originally was. If you want a clean read on your pattern, I encourage you to take the Wealth Identity quiz on my website. It's basically a money personality quiz for your financial identity. So as you're listening to the show, you can really zone in on when I'm providing you with recommendations, you can zone in on the one that really resonates for you. And it's really important because optionality isn't a one size fits all. Your strategy has to match your pattern, right? Remember we talked about borrowing somebody else's goals and why that might not be working and you can't seem to get ahead on your own financial or wealth plan because you're picking goals that actually don't fit your life. And so that's why I know you're here listening. Okay. Now here's the goal for today. We are going to score optionality in the next 90 days because 90 days is a realistic window. It's long enough to matter, but it's short enough to act and really wrap your head around. We're going to score 4 different categories. The 4 categories are cash optionality, time optionality, income optionality, and decision optionality. And then you'll build a simple 30-day plan, one with a quick win and one with a big lever. All right. So if you can, open the notes on your phone. If you're driving, just listen and do it later, bookmark this, and you can use the worksheet from the website to help you sit down and do this. But schedule it. When are you going to do it? That's the only way that you're going to actually do it. So I hope that this is giving you a little bit more perspective on what not only we're going to be talking about today, but the difference between identifying what you're making in your income or revenue from your business and actually what are the options that are available to you and why this is important. It's really important because we're going to talk about this in the next segment is how your score actually begins to tell you what is happening and where you might want to decide to focus on first. So we just talked about the 4 categories. I don't recommend you try to tackle them all at once. It's never a good idea. You're only going to cause yourself more anxiety, more stress, and probably more guilt and shame for not being able to be in a different place. I want you to let all of that go, right? I'm going to follow after we actually figure out what your score is. I'm going to walk you through how to craft your plan. And so when you craft your plan, again, bookmark this episode so that you can actually sit down and really think through it. It's not going to take you very long. So maybe you'll need 20 or 30 minutes at the max, but it's really important that you sit down and do this because it's really going to help you with all the episodes that are going to be coming up next. Now, if you like what you're hearing, don't forget that you can also watch this episode and others on YouTube. You can go to AM 950 and select Do Different Better, or you can watch it on YouTube at Do Different Better. That's the handle. And you can also catch clips about this on Instagram that you can share with your friends if you're really digging the content and you're digging the show. And you can go to Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. If you're not sure that you can do this on your own, I want you to really check out some of our upcoming virtual and in-person events at www.dodifferentbetter.com. We've got an event coming up on May 12th, as well as an event that's coming up on June 27th. That will be an in-person event. The May 12th event will be a virtual event. And then also you can check me out at the Pride Parade on Twin Cities Pride on June 26th and 27th. So I can't wait to see you after the break when we're going to get into actually taking your optionality score. I'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, your wealth alignment coach and your money co-pilot. Okay, we spent the first part talking about what is optionality and why optionality is important. So now what we're going to get into is the optionality score. So again, if you're listening to this in the car, go ahead and listen to this so you kind of get oriented to it. But then I want you to bookmark this so you can go back, sit down and work on this. And you're going to download the score sheet. And then you're going to take this quick scoring to be able to see what's level of optionality are you sitting at so you can actually craft a plan that's going to help get you to where you're trying to go. Now, here's a quick note. This is not a test you pass or fail. Okay? For all my high achievers, all my type A's, this is data. This is information. It is not about, I scored 100. That's not the goal here, okay? This is a snapshot that gives you financial clarity. So we can honestly and objectively see where you are right now so you can see where the gap is of where you are right now to where you want to be. Now, we are going to score each category on a scoring system of 0 to 5. Your total score is going to be between 0 and 20. So you can only get 20 points. If you score between 0 and 6, that's really going to give you that you're very, very fragile and very, very reactive. So it's information, okay? Not judgment, not shame. Next is 7 to 13. It means you're stable-ish, but you might have some constraints. That's okay. I'm also going to help you come up with some ways to deal with that. All right. And if you're 14 to 20, you are very flexible and building even more power. Again, no shame, just strategy. So now let's talk about the categories, right? I told you there are 4 categories. So here they are, and here are the questions. So your cash optionality is about liquidity, how much cash you have access to in a very short amount of time. And it's also about optionality is about safety, right? Meaning that you are safe from something catastrophically hitting you that will take you off your game. So here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Question 1, do I know what my financial baseline is. And remember, baseline means the minimal viable month of expenses. These are your housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and your minimum debt payments. Now, here's how you're going to give yourself a number. If you give yourself a 0 if you have absolutely no idea what your baseline is, and it's okay, right? This is all information. 1 through 2, if you have a rough guess of what your baseline is, and give yourself a 3 to 5 if yes, I know it and it's written down. All right. Question 2, can I cover a $1,000 surprise without going into debt? Give yourself a 0 if no, I'm automatically putting it on a credit card. Give yourself a -3 if you're partly, right? And give yourself a -5 if, yes, I can do this without stress, right? Now, question 3, how many months of baseline could I cover if my income actually dips? This is your emergency savings, all right? So give yourself a 0 if it's less than 2 weeks. Give yourself a 2 if it's about 1 month. Give yourself a 3 or a 4 if you've got 2 to 3 months, and give yourself a 5 if you've got 3+ months that you have with confidence. All right. Now, I want you to give yourself a cash optionality score based on those questions. Okay. Have you thought about it? Have you added it up in your head, or if you're sitting down, have you got it? Okay. Now let's connect this to our baseline buffer brick house framework. So once again, for those of you maybe listening for the first time, your baseline is that what are your minimal expenses to keep living? Your buffer is your shock absorber fund, and your brick house is your true resilience fund, right? These are all the different levels of money that you've got. Cash optionality is built by that stack, okay? Now, we're going to go into category 2. We're going to talk about time optionality. Time optionality is about your wealth capacity and your ability to implement decisions without being burnt out. So here are the questions. Question 1, do I have time to manage money without panicking or without stressing out? Give yourself a 0 if no, I avoid it completely. A 2 or 3, or if I can squeeze it in sometimes. And give yourself a 5 if it's yes, I have a weekly reset and monthly close. If you've been listening to the show, many of you might be a 5, okay? Because you've been hanging with me for a while. Question number 2, is my life overloaded? If your schedule is packed and you're constantly fatigued, optionality is low because you can't actually execute despite you wanting to. So I want you to put down 0 if you feel overloaded constantly. I want you to give yourself a 3 if it's manageable. And I want you to give yourself a 5 if you're like, yes, I have lots of breathing room. Okay. Next question. Question number 3. Do I have recovery capacity? What I mean by this is if something happens, do you have time to handle it without your whole life collapsing? Give yourself a 0 if you have 0 slack. There's no room. And I want you to give yourself a 5 if you have some slack. Now, give yourself a time optionality score on a 0 to 5, right? So what's your time optionality score? Okay, you got it? Great. Now we're going to move on to category 3, which is your income optionality. Income optionality is your ability to replace income or shift it if needed. So here are your questions. Question 1, how many income sources do I have? Give yourself a 0 if you have one fragile income source. That might be you are on straight commission and you might be new to a job. You might have a fragile source of income that's only one stream. I want you to give yourself a 3 if you have one primary income source and a small secondary one. Maybe you've got a side hustle. Maybe you sell desserts during the holiday season. Maybe you have digital downloads that you have on Etsy. If you've got a secondary income and a primary income, give yourself a 3. And I want you to give yourself a 5 if you have multiple meaningful streams or a strong pipeline of income. Maybe you have a rental property, you have a job, but you also have maybe a side hustle that is driving revenue that you don't necessarily have to manage in any significant way. Now here's question number 2. If I lost my job or key client, how fast could I replace that income? Give yourself a 0 if the answer is, I have absolutely no idea how long it would take me to replace that. Give yourself a 2 or a 3 that maybe I could do that. I could replace that in 3 to 6 months. And I want you to give yourself a 5, meaning I have a pipeline of skills and network. I will be able to rebound very, very quickly. Okay, question number 3. Do I have runway? This goes back to having an emergency savings and a brick house, right? So I want you to give yourself a 0 if you have absolutely no runway. And I want you to give yourself a 5 of, yes, I have enough to pivot without panicking, right? Going into a deep depression and crying in a ball in a corner somewhere in my house. Give yourself an income optionality score. So add those together and then give yourself an optionality score. Now, last category number 4. This is decision optionality. Decision optionality is the ability to make decisions without spiraling out of control. This is where money anxiety lives the most, right? So here are your questions. Question number 1, do I have decision rules? Any decision rules? Here are some examples. You might have a checking rule. You might have a 24-hour rule. You may have a 1 in, 1 out rule, or you might have an investing cadence. We've talked about this in the last couple of episodes, so you might want to check those out if those are new concepts to you. You've never heard them before. Okay. So I want you to give yourself a 0 if you are saying to yourself, no, I really make these decisions in the moment. I want you to give yourself a 3 if you have some rules. Maybe you don't stick to them all the time, but you've got some rules. And then I want you to give yourself a 5 if you can say, yes, I follow my rules 80 to 90% of the time. Okay. It's okay. Once again, we are not seeking perfection. All right. Question number 2. Do headlines that I read on TikTok or Instagram or on the news change my behavior in any way? If the answer is yes, I react, I want you to give yourself a 0. If you're like, sometimes, then give yourself a 3. And if your answer is no, I review and make decisions on a very specific cadence, then I want you to give yourself a 5. You're amazing, which also tells me you've been listening to the show for a while. You're a subscriber. And then question 3, do I second guess myself constantly? If you are doing this daily, I want you to give yourself a 0. Sorry, I know that's harsh. Okay. If you're doing this occasionally, go ahead and give yourself a 3. And if it's rarely, my system is trusted, it's reliable, give yourself a 5. Now, give yourself a decision optionality score of 0 to 5. Okay. Now I want you to total your score. I want you to add up all 4 numbers from each one of these optionalities. Okay, now your total optionality is going to be out of 20. All right. Now here's the interpretation again. I gave it to you at the top, and now I'm going to give it to you again. If you're between a 0 and a 6, this is what I call fragile optionality, meaning you need baseline clarity, which is why you're listening to the show. And you need to build a buffer and obligation reduction. You need to take some of these obligations that you have and bring them down so you can create more breathing room, right? That's what we're trying to do. Create more breathing room. If you're a 7 to a 13, once again, you're stable-ish, but you've got some constraints. You need some targeted restructuring and some decision rules that help guide your reaction. Okay. And if you're a 14 through 20, you have lots of flexibility. So our goal is going to be to protect it and start positioning you for leverage, right? And we're going to be talking about leverage in the summertime, all right? Now, I also want you to identify your top 2 weak categories. Those are your leverage point. Take the ones where you scored the least in that optionality. Those are the ones that we are actually going to focus on. And we need to identify that before we start creating a plan. And again, I don't want you to think that you're going to work on these all 4 at the same time. First of all, that's how you start to create more stress and anxiety, and you feel failure because you actually begin to move nothing. So we're really going to start in really, really lean, really, really crisp, because remember, forward action creates traction, right? You're going to hear me say that a lot. Forward action creates traction, but we've got to be focused in our forward action so we actually can begin to see what is actually working, what's not working, where we need to make adjustments, and then create that as a system that works on its own, right? Then you can move to then working on the next thing that you find might be a place you want to concentrate your time and attention. So before we get into a plan, I want you to name your 2 biggest option killers. Here are some common ones, okay? High fixed costs. Maybe you moved into a house that you've moved into a home because you have a new income, you've moved into a bigger home. Everything's going to be more. You're going to be paying more for replacement costs for things when they break down. You have a higher mortgage. Do you have a lot of stacked debt? Maybe it's a lot of credit cards. Maybe when you got that new job or you got that promotion, you went out and bought a new car for yourself and a new car for your partner. So now you have these 2 high-end expenses. And now with gas prices going up, that's now another expense, right? Maybe you have some family obligations that you are supporting. I had a friend of mine, she was helping to pay for her nephew to go to culinary school. Now, again, this isn't about providing any judgment about that, but we need to understand what are the implications of that family obligation that's not your own, and what is it doing to your long-term financial stability, right? Maybe it's because you don't have a baseline number, or maybe you have thin emergency savings. Or it could be you have too many subscriptions, or maybe you're door dashing a little too much or Uber eating a little too much. It could be insurance drift, right? Either you have insurance payments that are no longer valid, but because the payment is on auto renew, you haven't even looked at it. Or perhaps you have no cadence at all in how you think about or evaluate what's going on in your financial life. Or it could be that you just have too much financial content noise. You're following every single financial, handle on Instagram or Facebook, and you're getting overwhelmed with all the information. Or it could be that you're just overcommitting to everything all the time, right? So if any of those resonated, I want you to pick 2, just 2. What are the top 2 that you're like, oh, that happens a lot. I see that recurring a lot. Maybe you don't know. So maybe what you need to do is over the next few days, see how it pops up for you, right? And then come back to this episode and say, oh, these are the 2. I didn't know what they were before, but now that I'm paying attention, I have a better idea of what's happening. Because optionality is built fastest when you stop trying to fix everything, right? So coming up in the next segment, this is when we're going to work on the 30-day plan. So we've talked about what optionality is. We've talked about why it's important. And then we've just talked about scoring across 4 different option categories. And what you are going to do is you're going to pick one. And we've talked about what are the optionality killers. And you've identified what are the 2 that most impact you, right? It could be 3 or 4 of those, and that's fine. But again, I want you to pick the top 2 because those are the ones that we're going to look at and create some structure around as we talk about building your 30-day plan. So the 30-day plan is going to be this. It's going to be 1 quick win. It's going to be 1 big lever that's going to be tailored by your wealth identity so you can actually follow through and feel some success. All right? Okay. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. We have just been covering income optionality and how you can make better decisions. So coming up, we're going to get into the 30-day plan. If you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube at Do Different Better. And you can follow me on Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back, my money move makers. You are listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. I am your wealth alignment coach and money co-pilot. So great to have you here. If you're just now joining us, we've been talking about optionality, which is the second letter in my soul framework. The first part of the year, we've talked about stability and what you might need to actually create stability. And we need stability before we move into optionality. We've got to have a very stable ground before we start to create where we can have options. So in the first part of the show, I talked about what optionality is, why it's important. And then I had you create and give yourself an optionality score. Again, no judgment, this isn't no shame, right? This is so that we have a clear understanding of like where you're actually sitting. So then we can build a plan that's based on where you are, not where you think you are or where you think you should be, but actually where you are so that we know the plan that we create is actually going to stick and is going to be sustainable and you're able to maintain it ongoing. We also talked about what might be the things that kill optionality. And I asked you to pick what are the top 2 things that are killing your optionality, because those are the things that we need to think about as we move into the plan. If you haven't taken your wealth identity quiz to find out what your wealth identity is, please go over to www.dodifferentbetter.com. Take the wealth identity quiz, because the answers that I'm going to give you and the recommendations that I'm going to make on building your plan are going to be based on your identity. So I want you to know what your wealth identity is so that as you're listening, you can take the tips that actually correlate to you. But you might be able to just listen in and be like, oh yeah, that's me. And then be able to build your plan based on that. But you can go back and confirm your wealth identity afterwards. So again, right now we're going to build the plan based on what we've talked about earlier. And I'm going to keep it very, very simple, because simplicity is what actually converts and helps you build traction. Your 30-day plan is going to have 2 targets. 1, I want you to have a quick win that creates some immediate slack for you, right? And slack is what creates optionality. And then number 2 is you're going to have one big lever. So think about the slot machine, right? They don't even have levers anymore. But remember back in the day, if you look at old movies, the slot machines had the big lever. We're going to do that. We want to pull one big lever that's going to create some structural freedom. All right. So your quick wins should be high control, low pain, and fast results. Okay. Those are our criteria for creating our quick win. And here are some of the best ones, particularly for my high earners. Option A, doing a full subscription sweep. This is taking the time. Yes, you're going to need to take the time, but there are some apps that will also help you do this, right? I want you to cancel or downgrade 5 recurring charges. Right? Even $150 a month is $1,800 a year of optionality. So if you're using one of these platforms like a Rocket Money or Monarch or Plink, they might do this for you where you can go and ask for it to pull down all of your recurring charges across all the different credit cards that you have them on or debit accounts that you have them connected to. And it can give you that list. And I want you to pick 5. You probably have far more than you think. You probably think, Elaine, I only have 5. I doubt it in today's age. I know I don't have 5. I was arrogant to think that I only have a few until I looked at my account. I was like, ooh, yeah, I have a lot more than I think they do. And you want to be mindful of not looking at just the monthly ones, but look at the annual ones. Those are the ones that get you, right? And think about, can I go without this for at least a short amount of time? Maybe it's that annual subscription to that particular platform that you rarely use, but it comes annually. Don't forget to look at your annual subscriptions, not just your monthly recurring charges, because those are also recurring as well. And they're easy to forget because they're only annual. So you might have to go through all of your bank account for the entire year to find out. And you might, if you don't have a platform like a Monarch or something like that, or a Rocket Money, you can just take your statements and you can put them into your favorite GPT and say, hey, I want you to look at these last 5 years of statements or 2 years of statements and tell me what are the annual subscriptions that you see here. Put them in a table of who they are, what they're for, and how often I might be using them, right? So you can do something like that. You don't necessarily have to make this a painstaking process. You can leverage AI to help support you to get to some answers very, very quickly. Now, option B is negotiate one recurring bill. This could be your phone, it could be internet, it could be insurance. It's any type of service plan, right? And this is what you're going to do. This could be a 10-minute call that actually saves you hundreds. You might even be able to use their chat function on their website for the particular service, right? I've done this. I cannot tell you how many times. It's amazing. Call your cable company and say, hey, can you look at my account and see where there might be some cost savings? Or you can say, hey, I saw that there is a commercial of giving new customers this discount. I want that discount because I've been a longtime customer. If they tell you no, you can say, I'm considering moving to another platform or another service provider. Now, sometimes with cable, we don't have that option, but with streaming services, maybe you replace your cable with the streaming, right? And now, but again, remember we talked about in the second segment, one in, one out. You're swapping, you're not adding, okay? So if your favorite TV show that you're watching on cable is actually available by streaming, that might provide you with cost savings as well, because you're not paying for a whole cable set of mostly channels that you don't even watch, right? Going to your credit cards and asking them if you've got an annual fee on your credit card, asking them to waive the fee for that year. For some of these credit cards, especially for my high earners, you might be with an American Express card or something like that. They're charging you $800, $900, $1,000 for the year, and you're getting all these benefits. So maybe what you do is like, hey, can you waive this for 1 year? I've been a long-time customer, waive it. That's $1,000 that now you can leverage to be able to put into your flex fund, your baseline fund, your buffer, or your brick house fund. All right. Now here's option C. Option C is automation. I love automation. This is you're going to auto transfer $25 to $100 a week into your flex fund or your buffer fund. All right. And we just talked about flex fund in the previous episode. Automation is what builds financial stability, especially if you know that you don't have willpower, or you don't have a good attention span, or you don't have a cadence. Right? Automation makes it easy, whether it's automation and going into these different accounts like your buffer, your brick house, or your baseline account or your flex fund account, or it could be just having your money come into your HSA, right? Because that's also could be part of that, your flex spending account that you have provided by your employer. I just want you to set up these automations, particularly if you have low time optionality. Having automations helps a lot. All right. And here's option D. Option D is stop one recurring convenience spend, right? Once again, this could be your delivery memberships. It could be that impulse treat yourself cycle, right? And we all have those. I have them as well, right? But the whole idea is we want to start building optionality. So we're going to have to do things a little bit different than how we've done them in the past. This is default spending that you actually don't really value. Maybe it gives you a little dopamine hit and gives you a little high in the moment. But then it's like that little kid who opens up the gift on during the holidays, and then 5 minutes later they stop playing with the toy. So if that lands for you, correlate that to your spending patterns. Are you doing that? You're just buying, and then literally an hour later or the next day, the high is gone and you're not even thinking about that thing that you bought. All right. I want you to pick one and assign a number. Okay. So here's what you're going to say. My quick win will free up X amount of dollars per month. I want you to write this down. So remember, you got your financial notebook, or you might have it in your notes on your phone. I want you to create a financial note. So as you're listening to the show and we're talking about different things and different things are resonating and you're making different aha moments or revelations, write these down, type them down. You're going to want to see this. You want to document your journey. It's really powerful and important to see where you were to where you are. So it gives you momentum to keep going. So for this is your quick win. I want you to write this down. My quick win will free up X amount of dollars. You're going to put in that number per month. And when you see that number, I want you to just take a moment to see how you're feeling. How is it sitting with you? Do you feel a little bit more relaxed? Do you kind of like sink down in your chair a little bit? Do you feel a little more settled and a little more stable just because you have this declaration and you know what this number is? Because then you can start calculating, oh, if this is what it is per month, what will it be at the end of the year? And then what will I do with that at the end of the year? That could be powerful, right? Now let's shift our attention to the big lever. So the big levers are this. Higher pain, right? More strategy and bigger impact. These are our criteria. So here are some common ones that you want to think about. Lever 1 is your housing ecosystem reduction. We talked about your housing ecosystem a few episodes ago. These are the things that are not just the rent or the mortgage, but all the things that come with having a home. The utilities, the taxes, the HOA, the maintenance, the project creep, right? That project that seems to have gone out of control, right? The renovation, okay? Freeze upgrades for 90 days and lower the ecosystem, right? Maybe you have lawn care. Maybe you suspend lawn care for 90 days and take that money to now fund your flex fund or your baseline fund, all right? Again, this isn't about forever, but it's about creating some breathing space. Here's another lever, debt restructure. Maybe there's an opportunity to lower your interest rate that you're paying. Maybe it's a matter of adjusting the payments or getting a deferral for a certain amount of time, or maybe even getting a waiver for some 1 or 2 or 3 months, right? The idea here is that we stop stacking more obligations, all right? Debt is a monthly tax not only on optionality, but on your mental and physical load. And when you have a mental load, it manifests itself physically. Now, lever 3, this is car note right sizing. If transportation costs are stealing your buffer, then it's not a flex. It's actually a trap. Lever 4 is family CFO boundaries. This could be actually supporting a budget plus having a rescue rule. And I talk about that in previous episodes. If helping others prevents you from building a buffer, a brick house, your optionality quickly dies. So I want you to pick one of these, and it's going to say, my big lever is, and you're going to fill in the blank. All right? Now, to make sure that you actually execute, we're going to tailor this approach to each wealth identity, right? Remember when I told you to go take the wealth identity quiz? So if you're a builder, you're going to try to do all of this perfectly. And I'm going to tell you, don't. Here's a rule for you. 1 metric, 1 lever. That's it. Set a timer, finish, and move on. I know that's going to be tough. For my caretakers, your biggest optionality killer is often relational. So here might be a rule for you. I'm going to work on my baseline and my buffer first. Support budgets or no to a wealth move, and that is not selfishness. For my maximizers, you will stack goals, and I'm going to tell you, don't. Your rule is 1 big lever in 30 days. Stop strategy hopping because consistency is what's going to get you to win. And for my minimalist strategists, I want you to avoid you will avoid admin until it's urgent. So here might be a rule you might want to consider. Automate and do the smallest win first because you need to see momentum, and momentum reduces your overwhelm. Now, because this is quarter 2 and we're moving into optionality, I want you to install 2 decision rules that prevent you from relapsing. So here are a couple. Number 1 is the cadence rule. And here's what you're going to say. I review money weekly and monthly. I don't renegotiate daily. Rule number 2, which is our 24-hour rule. I will wait 24 hours before any non-essential purchase over X amount of dollars. It could be 25, it could be 100, it could be 200, but make it make sense, especially if you know that you have a habit of doing that. Whatever that number is, probably reduce it by 50%, just so you can catch yourself. Rule number 3, it's the 1 in, 1 out rule. Before I add a monthly payment, I'm going to remove one. And ideally, the one that I add is lower than the one that I'm replacing. Okay. Number 4, checking boundary. I check accounts on schedule, not when I'm anxious, right? Pick 2, and I want you to write them down. Rule number 1 and rule number 2. That's your decision optionality upgrade. All right. Now, let's close the loop with a values-aligned wealth and conscious finance, because this isn't just optimization, it's actually alignment, all right? So here's something for you as we start to bring the show to a close. Optionality isn't about deprivation. That's not what it's about. It's really about creating choices that match your values and the goals that where you see yourself. What's your vision of success? Conscious finance means you control the terms, not lifestyle creep, not family pressure, not the economy, and certainly not TikTok. You. So here's your close. Your optionality score is not a label. It's a baseline measurement. Now, in the next 30 days, here's what you're going to do. You're going to raise your score by improving 1 category. You're going to reduce 1 option killer. And you're going to install 2 rules. And if you want the worksheet to do this really cleanly, go to the website and download the Optionality Score worksheet and take the Wealth Identity Quiz, your money personality quiz, so you know which pattern is actually running you. And as you continue to listen to past or upcoming episodes, you can lock into the recommendations I give for your specific wealth identity. Then you can go to YouTube and watch the deep dive where I actually do some calculations for you and you can get some examples. All right. Okay. So now here's where we're at. All right. I want you to turn income into optionality so that you can begin to do different better. Thanks for listening to this episode. You've been listening to Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and I can't wait to see you next time.